koutou katoa I ngā takitaki mai nei. We're here talking with Taiana and Nina. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Kia ora, my name is Taiana Mitomati. I'm from Fielding and I affiliate with Ngāti Kauwhata.
My name is Nina Simone Mitchell and I'm from Fielding and my iwi is Te Whana Apanui.
Kia ora. Can you please share with us your personal experiences of racism?
It's quite hard to kind of try to find one experience per se, but one that kind of does stand out to me would be one time I was with a friend and I was speaking to her grandmother, and her grandmother is Pākehā, and her grandmother mentioned to me, I was still a teenager, so I was quite young, and she had asked me what I thought about Māori being given back too much land. And to me it was kind of shocking. That was one of the first experiences with racism that I had as a young person. So it was kind of shocking and I didn't know how to react, and I didn't really recognise it as racism at the time. But when I got home and spoke to my parents about it and described what had happened, then they told me that that was a form of racism. It was her kind of being subtle about it and like kind of telling me that Māori were being given too much land back. So that was kind of a big one for me as a young student.
Yeah. So how did you process that at the time, like after your parents explained to you that that's a form of racism? Then how did you approach that kind of topic again?
I kind of it was hard to process at the time, being so young. I still didn't fully understand what had happened at the time. As
How
I
old
became,
were you?
I was about 14, so I was still really young. Like I had experienced small doses of racism, but nothing to that extent where it was directed at me for my full ethnicity. So, but yeah, I guess I just kind of realised at that point that there were people out there who were going to continuously feel this way, and my parents told me that that's got nothing to do with me, that's on their own personal experiences, and if that's how they feel, then that's their problem. It's got nothing to do with who I am as a person. As I've grown a lot older now, I've experienced a lot more than that, but since that experience I've found it a lot easier to process now, and it's kind of like, since my parents did tell me that I'm not the problem in that situation, then I've always had that in the back of my mind. Yeah.
So telling yourself I'm not the problem when you encounter experiences of racism, does that minimise the feeling? Can you explain what that feeling is?
It's anger, like resentment. Mostly just anger and sadness, really, that it's 2020 and you're still kind of experiencing those types of feelings. And so it's sad for me, but it also makes me very, very angry. And you kind of like, because you can't help it, like you can't help the way that you were born, you can't help that you were born a person of colour or anything like that. I can't help the fact that I was born Māori or anything. As proud as I am to be Māori, a lot of people, I feel, who have racist intentions tend to blame you for that, and I'm like, I couldn't choose what I wanted to be, whether I liked it or not. So I guess it's a lot of that. It's a lot of shame as well, because people always have those types of stereotypes for Māori, especially for young Māori. So you're always going to be stereotyped against. So yeah.
So how do you manage that on a day-to-day basis? Like you explained that you keep, you tell yourself I'm not the one to blame. I wasn't. This is how I'm born. But how else would you manage that or manoeuvre your way through that on a daily basis?
Personally, I just think that I would explain myself and my situation and to somebody that does have racist remarks. I explain to them who I am and that it's okay for me to be this person and it's okay for you to be that person. And I think for my biggest thing is I just throw back kindness no matter what. If they're throwing out racist remarks, then you kind of just throw back kindness in their way, and then that kind of changes the whole light for them. They kind of turn around and they're like, oh, expecting you to like punch them in the face or something like that. Being a Māori, like they expect you to all of a sudden lash out at them, but doing the complete opposite kind of shocks them and puts them in the position like, oh wait, hang on, like maybe what I said was really stereotypical or racist of me, and then that kind of gets them thinking about themselves. And yeah.
Just one more question, sorry Nina, before I ask you, is at the beginning you said it's hard to pinpoint one experience.
Yeah.
Is that, why is that?
I think growing up, especially in a small town like Fielding, it's always been majority of Pākehā people. So growing up in a small town like Fielding, there's always been Pākehā people were the majority, really. So there's always been racism within school and within going into town and going to do shopping in Fielding, just walking around Fielding. There's always been a lot of like racist remarks, the small things like following you around and things like that, like assuming that, like calling the police if you're walking around late at night because they assume that you're like breaking into houses or something. Like, so there's a lot of things like that, and that's just in the small town of Fielding. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. Because you live in Fielding too?
Yes.
Yeah. How long have you lived in Fielding?
I've lived in Fielding since I was about 16, 15.
Okay.
But before then, I actually grew up in from 5 till then in Christchurch. So I was in the city.
Yeah.
And it was in the South Island, and it was predominantly white. So, yeah.
So how, are you able to share with us a personal experience of racism that you've encountered?
Oh, I've experienced racism throughout my whole entire life, even if it wasn't directed at me. So, growing up in Christchurch, like going to public school, living in the suburbs, the stereotype was really heavy on Māori. So, like, the N-word would be used. Our culture would be known as thieves, violent. What else? Just real negative and different. So, growing up with those stereotypes, I would try to distance myself from being that, to the point where, like, I didn't learn my own language. I didn't know my culture. I believed I was Pākehā, and I guess it was difficult because I went to the point where I would dye my hair and
To change colour?
yeah, bleach my skin. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, it was naive of me to do. And it wasn't until I moved here that I still believed in those, because it was different again. Like in Christchurch, it was quite open and friendly. People could say hi to each other as long as you didn't identify as that, as Māori or just a darker race in general. But coming here I still believed in that stereotype. Just going, because I went to Awatapu College, and it was predominantly Māori and Pākehā, but the Māoris, I couldn't tell the difference between different Polynesians and stuff, you know. So naively and arrogantly of me, I still believed in that stereotype. And it wasn't until I fell in love and to a Pākehā and knew his family, that those close relatives told me that, no, you don't fit in with us. You aren't us. That I woke up. It wasn't... Sorry. It wasn't until we had a kid together that I realized that I needed to learn who I was. And he changed my life. But yeah, it was horrible growing up. And I'm sad that I had to have a family to find out that my thoughts were wrong.
Yeah. Karoa. You know, when you talked about the stereotypes that you were surrounded by, the negative stereotypes when you were in Christchurch, can you explain, you know, what did that look like?
Oh, God. So, really that looked like just segregation, really, in primary school. It started off as segregation, so it was more, we still communicated, but we didn't communicate to the point we would be friends. You know what I mean? So
Superficial communication.
yeah, it was just because you're in my class and we need to communicate and get projects done. Or like, because we're doing fitness together or playing games. You know, it was still divided, but it wasn't shoved in our faces, but we still knew of it. It wasn't until we really got into intermediate that the segregation continued and it was more full on, you know, like don't hang out with them because of the colour or because of their colour, or it would be based on attitude as well. Like, so I've noticed growing up, the Māoris are real open and strong, and you know, they'll yell at you across the street if they know you, and they're real open.
And emotional.
Yeah, and very emotional, and they're very straightforward. And I've noticed with Pākehā, they get really intimidated by that, you know, intimidated with the straightforwardness. And they're quite different too. I've noticed that they beat around the bush a lot to get somewhere.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or they use, yeah. Does that make sense? Am I going off track?
We all need a tissue. Yeah,
through school, yeah, it was just segregation. And it wasn't until high school, really, that those stereotypes were more hammered into your head.
And can you describe for us what, you know, like, in what way?
So, in Christchurch, Polynesians ruled sports, you know. So, in that sort of way, because of that, they were known as like, you know, grunts and stuff. Or, it was just, the stigma with them were just negative, really, and you just knew it was because you got put through that through primary school. Like, you already knew that negativity, and then you already knew that in intermediate, and then going to high school, it was just more heavy on you, I don't know how to really explain it because it wasn't really directed in your face. You just knew you were different.
Mm.
You just knew that you didn't want to be a part of it. It was just more of a different group. And yeah, it was more, oh, they're just being violent again. You know, just the more of the stereotypes were more just heavy, but they were acting that way at the same time, which was really stink.
So was this from teachers and students, or predominantly?
I never saw it in my teachers because I was never directed by it. Yeah, if you know what I mean. But I just felt we were different. Like even my friends thought that. And I went to Kashmir, so like, oh yeah, no. It was just different. Like white, rich, you stay there. You don't make friends with them because they're the lower class. Is literally how it was. Yeah. So they were just different, and that was them. But if you wanted to be with us, you can't be with them.
Right. So you had to distance yourself from who you are. Who you
Yeah,
were.
because I felt as if I identified with Māori, I was poor, and I was a thief, and I was violent. You know, like even learning little bits of te reo, I was like, why would you speak that N-word language? Is like how I was like talked to with my friends. My friends would say that. And so then here I am learning Japanese instead, you know, which was close to it with our vowels. But I didn't know that at the time until I moved.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really segregation, but from a young age to the point where it was, no, don't. Unless you want to be poor and live in a state house. Yeah.
Okay.
It was really horrible. It was quite hateful.
Do you both have any, I guess, strategies, or you've already shared one about replying with kindness, you know, which is noble and awesome. You know, we can all do that, but and I believe some of our ancestors have in the past, but it still exists today. So in terms of really kind of interrogating some of those, some of that thinking, some of that racist thinking and attitude, so that our children and our children's children don't have to, you know, feel like they've been segregated, that they're divorced from their identity. Are there any strategies or solutions that you think that we could do that really kind of, well, coming here today speaking about racism is a one thing because that's putting it out there, but that really interrogates it so that it's not covered up with this the slogan of what was Jacinda Ardern's slogan, they are us, you know, bull crap, because obviously that's not the experience of some Māori in Aotearoa, never has been. So do you have any ideas, is what I'm trying to get at, about how we can interrogate those attitudes so that they don't just keep perpetuating and continuing generation.
I reckon with those sort of people and with those sort of mindsets, they need to be exposed more often. So maybe even if welcoming them to the marae. You know, a lot of people I've noticed, they struggle to see the difference between Māori culture and hoodlums. You know, well, that's how I grew up. And like, they just lump that into one. So yeah, maybe if people with those sort of mindsets are exposed to the actual culture and what Māori actually do, maybe they could get the mindset of, no, they're not like that, they're this.
Yeah. And also, you know, this perception of violence as well from Māori. You know, actually, if we had a look at European history and religions, we'd see a lot of violence in there, you know, but that's not highlighted as much as, you know, the small amount of violence that does happen in Māori society, in fact, all societies. Would that be could that be a strategy? Turning the mirror back?
Oh, saying that you're just as violent as us.
Yeah, or
sort of
worse.
thing.
And
Or
you
worse.
have a history of this, and these are the times, and this is what happened.
I think that would be a bad idea. Only because it's saying like, no, you're not as you're as bad as us, you know. But then it just turned into an argument from there on, like, and you're trying to say, and then it turns into a debate of like who's really violent, you know what I mean? Just pointing negativity at negativity. Yeah. Well, that's how I see it as.
Yeah, but sometimes exposing it, shining a spotlight on it, and saying, well, actually, this is the source of the violence. With that knowledge and information, can change people's thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even just pulling them up on it, like being like, that's not, and like you shouldn't be saying something like that. Like that's a racist thing to say. Then it can't, people kind of step back and they're like, oh, like, is it actually? And then they have to actually think about it from someone else's point of view, and then they realise, oh, that actually is a horrible thing to say. Like I shouldn't be saying something like that. But just pulling it up as soon as you see it, like small racist things that people do. Yeah, I think things like that do make a difference.
Yeah, confronting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because when you're at school, that's hugely difficult.
Yeah.
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 But also like small things like our babies are in kohanga, putting our kids back into our own kohanga and putting them back into our own kura so that they can learn our language and learn amongst other Māori and they're being taught by Māori and, you know, things like that, and they can go back out into the world and still know who they are because they've been brought up that way. And
Can you please share an experience with institutional racism that you may have encountered?
okay, so I attended Catholic schools. I attended a Catholic primary school and a Catholic high school. There weren't a lot of Māori at my schools, especially primary school. Primary school, as I was younger, that was mostly probably I had experienced a lot of racism at primary school. It was just like a lot of small things. Like as soon as like they start talking about the Treaty of Waitangi, you know, like I'm the only Māori kid in my class, so they kind of get you to stand up on behalf of your race and and ask you like what the impact's been on you, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm 6. Like, well, I don't even know how to spell treaty, like, at that stage. But at the time, you kind of don't recognise it as racism. But then you get older, and it's like things like all the Pākehā kids get picked as like house captains or something, but none of the Māori kids do because it's like a Catholic private school, and I don't know, their parents are probably paying way too much for their kids to go there or something. Yeah, it's a lot of things like that, like if they have like second-hand uniforms for sale, they always used to put notices in my bag to send home to my parents, you know, like, we have cheap uniforms for sale, like if you need more uniforms or anything like that. My brothers always, ever since they started primary school, they had to attend like different reading classes, so they had to go into like a different class and have like extra tutoring for like reading and maths and stuff. But my brothers were fine. I just think that they just didn't know how to work with them, and so
They didn't know how to engage them.
So it was a very different, like my primary school experience. I hated my primary school experience when I think about it nowadays, compared to how my kids are experiencing school. It's so much different, and I'm like Nina was saying in her kōrero, you kind of just get so used to being around Pākehā people that you start to think that you are Pākehā, like, and it's like, oh, maybe I'm supposed to be like this, maybe they're right, maybe I'm not supposed to be looking like this, or I should be acting like this, or dressing this way, because that's what they say. And, but then they have things like pōwhiri at school, and then they want you to go up and represent your school, and it's really contradicting, like, oh, we've got these important people coming, and we have to have a pōwhiri. You can go out and go do the karanga. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You can't just pick the first Māori person you see and be like, you're leading the haka or you're doing the karanga. So that was a lot of my experience throughout high school for as well, was a lot with that. They would always pick the Māori looking students to kind of represent them in Māori things, for us that's like our tikanga and stuff, but for them it's like, oh, we just got to put like the first Māori kid that we see up there to try to represent our whole school. And I just thought it was ridiculous. Like at high school they had haka competitions. I think they still have them now. And they have like haka competitions, and when I think about it now, I'm like, that's horrible. And I'm like, you shouldn't be making it a competition. Like, that's a representation of our culture. Like, that means something to us as Māori. But in high school, like, you would have, each house would have a haka competition, and everyone would, like, get fake feathers and then try to pretend that they're dokura and then put them in your hair, but you don't know what they're meaning. Like, it's this whole school where there's probably like 10 Māori that attend there at a time, and it just looks ridiculous. Like, you have people drawing on spirals on their faces and acting like it's a moko kauai or something, and to me it's just like, that's a really good example of, and disappropriating our culture, really. So a lot of those experiences at school, especially when it comes to talking about the treaty, I always found it astonishing how whenever the treaty would come up during school times, they always turn to the Māori kids and ask you, like, what's your experience? Like, what do you think about this? Like, pinpointing you out. And it's like, I'm a student, you're supposed to be here to teach me, but like, you kind of always have like those types of,
like, you're meant to know all of this information and knowledge, and that you're going to represent your whole culture.
Like, you're supposed to know.
People.
Yeah, exactly. And then like the small things that you have been told by your tupuna growing up, and it's like, well, I know that we got robbed and that the treaty was wrong, and then all of a sudden your teachers are like, oh, no, like, no, you can sit down, like, we'll pick someone else. And I'm like, it's not even called a treaty because it was robbed. Like,
My son was telling me just the other day that in his social studies class, he was asked, the teacher asked, who knows what tau-reka-reka means? And then everybody looks at him. So, you know what tau-reka-reka means?
Cool.
Slave.
Oh.
Yeah, because her point was that even Māori had slaves. And it's just like...
They always do that, though. Like,
as a teacher with students, how does that even register your mind to think that that's okay to say something
horrible.
like that?
Wow.
Yeah.
But they always tend to do that. I notice a lot, especially with Pākehā. Like, you're kind of like, you stole my land, and then they're kind of like, but you killed these people, or you did this and you did that, and I'm just like, and then they try to make you feel thankful to be colonised, like Bob Jones, for example. Like, they try to make you feel bad for being yourself and standing up for our rights and standing up for who we really are. And then when we do, then they all of a sudden try to shut us down and tell us, well, if we weren't colonised, you wouldn't have cars, or you wouldn't have, like, shoes. And it's like, you're ridiculous. Yes, we would. Like, it's 2020. Like, we would. Like, but,
Yeah. Do you have anything that you wanted to add to that? I mean, gosh, that just blew me away. You know, your experiences in school.
No, I don't really have anything to add to that, because I never really noticed the Māori kids because of that. I was too busy with the white kids to even think about their feelings, because I was too busy saying that, no, you're just a hoodlum. You don't have a culture. Like, that was how arrogant I was. and brainwashed I was. Yeah, so I never really noticed until I fell in love and had a kid.
Yeah. And they're both in kohanga, and both your children are in kohanga and kura?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think keep them in that safe bubble for as long as you
Yeah.
can.
Damn straight.
But just know that that's, you know,
It's
there's going to be a
coming.
time when
Yeah.
they have to step out of that
Yeah.
and to, you know, regularly talk to them about standing up for themselves.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 And a lot of it does come down to like arrogance though, like simple things like not pronouncing your name properly, and it's just out of pure laziness. It's like you can pronounce a lot of Pākehā words that sound exactly the same, but you won't try and pronounce like our name or something. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I've noticed that comes from when people do that, it's because they don't respect the person. They don't even want to try because they know it's like, there's moulding, I don't need to know,
Yeah.
you know?
That's what it certainly feels like,
Yeah.
eh? Because if you really cared,
yeah.
you would spend 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes a day is not much. 2 minutes a day practicing your vowels,
Yeah.
and then your, I don't know, what, ha, he, ho, hu.
Yeah.
You'd do that 5 minutes a day,
Yeah.
and then in a week you'd be on, you'd think.
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks for some people, a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't take years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it shouldn't. If you really cared about the person, and especially if you're a teacher,
Well,
if
yeah.
you really cared about the students in your class, then that's what you do.
Yeah. Damn straight.
So the message to our kids is they don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for sharing your experiences. Some really raw and honest experiences for our Anti-Racism Week coming up, National Anti-Racism Week coming up. Is there any final comments you want to say?
No, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
You don't really get a forum like this where you can openly speak about things like racism. It's still kind of, it's quite taboo if you bring it up. So yeah, it kind of hits people the wrong way sometimes. So it's nice to be able to come here and talk about that, and yeah.
Yeah. And I think people shouldn't listen to stereotypes. You know, I think people should be more open and more accepting and wanting to actually learn instead of just labelling everything to make your life easier.